Hi guys, Brittany here from By Brittany Goldwyn. I post videos about plants and projects, and today it's a very unseasonably warm day in December in Maryland Zone 7A. I've been in and out of the house doing a couple garden maintenance chores in the greenhouse and doing some plant chores here in my sunroom. So I thought it would be the perfect day to do a plant care video. I haven't done a purely plant care video in a while, but I haven't done one on the Hoya obovata yet. And my Hoya obovata is one of my absolute favorite houseplants. I love Hoyas. Hoyas make up the majority of the plants in my houseplant collection, but Hoya obovata has got to be one of my favorites. I mean, look at these leaves, they're amazing. There are lots of reasons why I love my Hoya obovata. We will cover them in this care video as I walk through how I've grown this big, bushy, beautiful plant. So let's talk lighting first and where to put your plant. Now, I move my Hoya obovata between this spot right here, which currently has a thermometer and 2 candles. As you can see, this is a south-facing window that I have a nice sheer curtain here on because it was burning some of my other Hoyas up here in the spring and summer when the sun gets super duper bright here. So I usually keep it either right here in this spot or I move it over to the coffee table right here, which still gets really lovely sun exposure here. Lots of bright indirect light is what you should shoot for the Hoya obovata to develop the best coloring and to grow at the best rate. As far as soil goes, I'll give you guys a peek at the mixture I have this one in. I did repot this obovata about a year ago, and I will probably keep it in this pot and on this trellis for a while longer. I've seen no signs of suffering in this pot, and they generally like to be a bit snug in their pot. But you can see that the soil mixture you want for this plant is something light, airy, and well draining. So any tropical houseplant mixture is going to work just fine for most of your Hoyas, but especially the obovata here. Now I will throw up a picture here of what this plant looked like when I first got it, and it was pretty pathetic, honestly. It did not look good for about a year. It was not happy in the conditions I had it in. I think the soil I had it in was too heavy, but ever since I've lightened up the soil and changed its conditions to something with a bit more bright indirect light and critically less water than I was watering it, it's been super happy and it has grown like a weed. So I want to touch on what you should do when your plant gets so big that it starts wanting to climb something. Now, I've seen people grow these as trailing plants. You could do whatever you want. It's totally fine. You can see these vines. They really enjoy having something to hold on to. So this is just a bamboo arch trellis I have in here. This is one that you do have to train a bit to get it to vine around this, but once you start training it, it just kind of takes over and does whatever it wants on its own. But you'll also see that I have a couple stems that are coming out pretty far here. Now I haven't decided if I want to trim these stems or just kind of let them go wild. I'm generally of the mindset that when your Hoya starts going wild, you let it do whatever it wants because, you know, they're Hoyas and they look really cool when they start going wild. But if you want to tame your plant a bit, you can consider something like an arch trellis or a pole. Now recently, while I was doing some pruning and light maintenance on my obovata, I noticed that there was a kind of leggy looking area to the plant. And that just means an area of the plant where there is more stem than there is leaves. The leaves could be pretty far apart in the growth. So what I generally do when I encounter leaves like that is I snip them off and I propagate them. So this one is just an example of somewhere on the stem that there was only 1 leaf growing instead of 2 out of here. So it gave it a little bit more of a bare look. You can just set this cutting in water and let it ride and then pop it into soil when it gets some roots. Or you could put it directly into soil to let it root in soil. Just make sure you keep it moist. I have done both methods with many Hoyas, including the obovata, and both of them have been successful. And I do think that the continual pruning of my plant and training it when it's on the trellis is one of the things that have kept it looking so bushy. So if you look at the stems, other than these big ones, these big end stems that have fresh growth on them, if you look at those stems, Most of them are not bare at all. So if there is an area that has not grown a leaf or has only grown one leaf, I have probably pruned it off already. Now you should not be afraid to cut your plants. Pruning your plants can definitely help to encourage healthier new growth or fuller growth, because when you trim a plant at the stem, it's going to branch off just a bit to create a bit fuller of a look. Now my obovata is probably about 6 or so years old now, and it has grown prolifically in like the last 3 years. About 2 years ago, it started flowering for me, and I did catch some video of it the last time it flowered, but I want to show you a close-up of what the peduncles look like on the obovata after they're done flowering. So peduncle is what the Hoya flower grows out of. You'll see them form on your plants, and it's possible that you could even get a peduncle forming on your plant and not see a bloom for a while. But here is an example of a peduncle that will produce a flower. And you don't want to remove these when your plant is done blooming, because it will bloom over and over from the same spot. So you're probably wondering about watering. The Hoya obovata has those very thick succulent-like leaves, so it stores a lot of water, right? So it's a very drought-tolerant plant, and you do not want to overwater this plant. In nature, it is a tropical plant that is accustomed to very light and well-draining soils and sudden downpours and then periods of drought. So I like to mimic that with my watering routine by carrying it over to the kitchen sink, which is where I am now, and watering it from above, cleaning off all of those leaves. So this is exactly what I do. I just rinse off the leaves. Since they are so big, they can be real dust magnets. So I just like to rinse them all off and then be sure that I'm getting plenty of water in the soil too. Now the pot that this one is in does have drainage holes in the bottom, so that is a critical part of ensuring that you're not overwatering your Hoya. You want to water it thoroughly and deeply and then let all of that excess water drain out of the bottom. Now, I like to wait until my Hoya obovata soil has dried out almost completely before I water it again. Any more often, and I have noticed that some of the leaves will yellow because there's not enough oxygen getting to the plant's roots. So definitely go easy on the watering with your plant until you get used to the conditions you're growing it in your house. Now, I will say that rinsing off all of the leaves is also a really good pest management best practice. I have yet to have any pest issues with this Hoya specifically, though it is vulnerable to all of the normal houseplant pests. So if you're overwatering and your soil's too dense, you may experience fungus gnats, you may have mealybugs on it, you may have aphids, any sort of other houseplant pests that you can get on other tropical plants, you can get on the Hoya obovata. I have not noticed it to be particularly vulnerable to any type of pest though, and when you do rinse off all of those leaves, tops and bottoms, and rinse down the stems when you wash the plant, when you water the plant, you wash the leaves and stems, it's a really good pest management best practice, because if there is something hanging out on there ready to have babies and ruin your whole weekend, there's a chance that you could dislodge it and knock it off. So it's just a good way to keep the plants dust free, keep any extra debris off of the plants that things could be hiding in, and just to keep things clean and tidy. Now, as far as temperature and humidity go, I would say it's very average where I have the plant. So here in my sunroom, I do not run a humidifier because I am lazy and I like low maintenance houseplants. And I also do not keep the temperature super high. This is a 4-season sunroom here, so I do heat it and cool it with the mini split up there on the wall. And that allows me to keep a relatively stable temperature in here, but it doesn't mean that it is overly hot or cold. So in general, I will keep it to about 67 or 68 in the winter. And then in the summer, it really struggles to keep up with the cooling since this is a south-facing area. And I generally keep it to about 76 or 77. So it has thrived in all of those temperatures. It is not cold or frost hardy though. So if you were to take this one outside for the spring or summer and put it on a covered patio or something like that where it is shielded from direct sunlight, just make sure you take it inside when it starts getting too cold at night. I would say when the nights are getting regularly down into the upper 40s, that is time to bring it inside. As a Hoya and a tropical plant, it also appreciates a lot of humidity. Though again, I do not give it a lot of humidity because I am just not a big humidifier person. I think they're a pain. I hate cleaning them. I like low maintenance plants that thrive in high threat environments. So I let all of my Hoyas just kind of do their thing in here. Humidity, I'm looking at my gauge right now. It is 32% in here right now. Sometimes it will get up into the 60s in the summer when it is very humid here in Maryland, but it has really thrived with all normal indoor air temperatures. So I would not feel like you have to add a humidifier for this one to thrive, though certainly if you do provide a more humid environment, it will definitely thank you. Okay, so that about wraps up what I have to say about the Hoya obovata. One of my favorite, not just one of my favorite Hoyas, one of my favorite plants. These leaves, these highly speckled leaves are just so unique, and even when people come over who aren't particularly plant people, they always remark on this one, the Monstera dubia, and the Hoya linearis. Those are like the three ones that really catch people's eyes and I think make really great additions to your collection. So if you have questions about Hoya obovata care, please drop them in the comments below. Otherwise, happy planting.